What is going on, Stallions and Stallionettes? You might have picked yourself up D2R, Diablo 2 Resurrected. It is a hell of a fun game, but there are some settings that you should immediately go into the menu and change to get the best experience out of this bad boy. I don't know why it's bad or why it's a boy, but let's get it. All right, Stallions, even before we get into the settings menu, what I want you guys to do is hit enter to open the chat menu and type in /FPS and hit enter. That will get your frames per second as well as your internet ping in the top left. And as you can see, as I'm running around, granted, there's not a whole lot of action on the screen, not a lot of enemies or NPCs, but my frame rate is at a nice lock 60. Pressing escape over here, going to options. I have a separate video going over just the video settings, as this is not a very well optimized game, and there are people with 3080s and 3090s, like myself, that are seeing chugging and even in some severe cases, overheating hardware, crashing, and freezing. I haven't experienced those last three, luckily just the frame rate chugging, but I do have a separate video that will be linked in the description below that goes over just the graphical settings in-game as well as some Windows 10 optimizations that do fix the game. Now, I recommend turning item label display to toggle, as where default it is on hold, so that way you can literally just turn it on and off on the fly, because there are going to be situations or scenarios where you're going to want to see literally a label of all the loot that is on the ground without hovering over it. So 90% of the time when I'm playing D2R or even D2 back in the day, I have loose floor loot labeled. Auto gold pickup. This is a real nicety. I recommend leaving it on. It is on by default, and basically it does just that. You are able to run over gold and pick it up instead of having to click on every loose piece of gold on the ground. It is a huge time saver. Now, granted, it is a little bit wonky, I would say, or not very sensitive. You do have to run directly over those coins. You have to literally be slip sliding on top of those shekels to pick them up. Auto party invite, if you are somebody that likes to play online with your buddies, leave that on. Now, these are all nicety features that have been added to D2 to make them a little bit more forgiving and user friendly. I do recommend leaving show item tooltip button prompts. When you are hovering over an item, it does give you little tips, and by default, these three are off. I recommend turning all of them on, because as you can see, I have my life and my mana, and also if I was using a throwing weapon such as a spear or throwing knives, I would also have an ammunition count on screen as well. I really do recommend turning life on, because that way you can get an idea as to exactly how much HP you have and how quickly it is dropping, so you know when you need to pop a potion. Now, as for mana, I can understand turning that off. For example, I'm a barb. I don't really use mana all that much for my abilities, so I can understand leaving this off. But me personally, I do like a visual representation of both my life and my mana. Same thing with ammo count. Nothing is more frustrating than running out of throwables and not knowing that you're out of throwables until you are getting your titties slapped around. Show clock. Don't really see a need for this. As long as you own a clock in your house or you have a cell phone next to you, you can see what time it is. Now, accessibility over here, you can bump this up to large. So if you are hard of sight and you just don't have your glasses on you and don't want to grab them because you're really enthralled with D2R, you can bump this up to large, and it does make everything easier to read. Some people get motion sickness from video games. Granted, this isn't a fast motion first-person shooter or racing game or fighting game or something like that, but there are some times when your character's getting attacked and it sways the screen back and forth, and by turning camera shake off, it can alleviate some of those issues if you do get a little bit woozy. Attack miss indicator, that's off by default. I like to turn it on. It puts a little white X. It puts a little white X on screen every time you miss an attack, so you know, well, I didn't get the damage output that I wanted from that attack. Subtitles. In most games, I leave subtitles off, but with D2 and D2R, I just leave it on. I would leave this off. This is basically when you walk by NPCs in the villages or common areas, you see the same message popped up every time you walk by them. If you're a controller player, I strongly recommend turning this on. Weapon swap separate skill buttons, and what this does is basically gives you separate bindings for when you do swap weapons. So as you know, you have two sets of weapons that you can have equipped at once or on the fly ready to switch. And when you do switch them, it changes all your skill bindings as well. So for a controller, which is already limited in bindings compared to something like a keyboard, that's useful. I would turn that on. Now, as for the auto map, this is completely preference, but I would recommend that you either make it a mini map in the top right or left, or if you are going to have the full size map, the full screen map in the middle, that you do set a custom opacity and make it about 40 or so, because that way it's not very intrusive if it is going to be in the middle of the screen. Me personally, what I've been doing here recently, and it's been working out good for me, is having it in the top left or right on auto, like that. Works for Mountain Dew. Thank you for the sub, big dog. All four of these should absolutely be turned on. It's simply common sense that when you open the map, you want it centered on your character. You don't want it looking down the hall, down at Diagon Alley. You want it over your actual character. Show party members. Yeah, you want to know where your friends are at. So if they're getting slapped around 6 ways from sundown, you can back them up. Show character names. Again, if you're playing with a party with friends, you probably want that on. And then this one right here, if you are a streamer or YouTuber, you're either live streaming or you're screen recording for YouTube, especially live streaming, I do recommend that you turn this one off because it has your game name and password, so anybody on the internet can literally be trying to join your game. Now over here in controls, now I get that this is an RPG, it's not some fast-paced FPS or BR where you need to have all your keybinds right there, but I don't like to really reach across my keyboard to hit I for inventory and whatnot. So as you see over here, pretty much the left 1/3 of my keyboard is what is used here to basically just keep my left hand sitting in one spot on the keyboard and be able to hit everything instead of having to reach across my entire keyboard to hit things. Also, what I did is I have the bottom row of my keyboard, so Z through M, well, actually through comma, bound to different abilities. Now, interesting thing about this game that I don't necessarily like is, unlike a lot of other RPGs or MMOs, you can't just press a keybind for an ability or a spell and have it pop off. It basically, let's say I hit spacebar right now. Now, if I press spacebar, it basically just changes the function of the left or right mouse click. You still have to click left or right mouse click. You can't just press a keybind and have it actually do the action. I get that maybe that's because they want you to be able to click on exactly where you want them to perform the ability, but if you're facing an enemy or something and you want to quickly be able to press spacebar to bash or to leap, barb abilities, that's frustrating. As for run, I do have it on a toggle. It is shift, so I can quickly hit it with my pinky, toggle it on so I don't have to sit there and hold it. You are going to be running a lot to get to your destinations for your quests. And obviously you're going to be using a lot of stamina potions, especially early game when your stamina is low as hell. But I do recommend having your sprint on a toggle, not a hold. And then right next to my sprint toggle, if I hold down control, he stays stationary. So that's good. If he keeps moving around when I'm trying to attack a single enemy, I can hold down control with my pinky and just click on that enemy that I'm trying to attack. So you definitely want to have a hold function, which makes your character stay stationary so you can whack off those attacks accurately. Not whack off, so you can perform adequately. Those are the settings that I do recommend that you change immediately in D2R to get the best experience, the most fluid, smooth, enjoyable experience out of D2. If this video did help you out at all, I greatly appreciate a like on the video. It helps it to get seen by more gamers, so this information will reach and assist them as well, which in turn helps me grow this little channel, which I do greatly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, as well as tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, and honest gaming peripheral reviews, and I'll see you tomorrow because I upload daily. Peace.